Let's look at a few different ways to divide decimals. Here we have 3 2/10 divided by 8/10. Think about the value of each of those numbers and what they mean. Try and put a context to them. I think about that with a ruler, where my 3.2 could be 3.2 centimeters, which is right here. And the 8/10 then would be 8/10 of a centimeter, which gets me right here. Well, the question's asking, how many 8/10 are there in 3 2/10? Let's look. I've got an 8/10 there. If I go over to here, I've got another 8/10 at 1.6, or 1 6/10. I've got another one right here at 2 4/10, and then I'm up at 3 2/10. So I've got 1 8/10, another 8/10, another 8/10, and another 8/10. 1, 2, 3, 4 8/10 in 3 2/10. So I know the answer to that is 4. But what about if I didn't have the context of the ruler? What would I do if I just wanted to write it down? I could think of it as 3 2/10 divided by 8/10. But one thing to do when we're dividing decimals is just to ignore those decimal points. Think about it this way instead. What's 32 divided by 8? Well, 32 divided by 8, I know that one. That's 4. But there's a second step I need to think about, and that's the decimal point. Where does the decimal point go in my answer? I need to make sure I put it in the right spot. So I go back to my original question and I think about it. I could round and estimate. Well, that's close to 3, and 8/10 is close to 1, and 3 divided by 1, well, that's 3. So if 3 divided by 1 is 3, I could think of my answer here. Yeah, 4 is close to 3. So I could say 3 2/10 divided by 8/10 is equal to 4, and the decimal goes at the end. So one way to solve problems like this is to use a model such as a ruler. Another way was to divide the whole numbers and use estimation to place the decimal point at the end. Let's try another question. 74 4/10 divided by 3 2/10. Let's ignore the decimal points and divide the whole numbers. I can write it like this, 32 into 744. So the question's asking us, how many 32s are there in 744? Well, we're going to think about it just in terms of the first 74. How many 32s are there in 74? Well, there's 2 of those. 32, 64, I can put that there, and I'm left with 10. And I can bring down my 4 now. Now the question is, how many 32s are there in 104? Well, it's more than 2. If I added another 32, I'd be up at 96. I think that's it. So 3 32s gets me 96. Now when I take that away, I see I've got 8. I've got nothing to bring down. Got to stop and think about this. This is where my idea about having 0/10 and 0/100 can come in. But if I'm doing that here, I need to make sure I do it up in my answer as well. So now I can bring down, and now I'm asking how many 32s are there in 80? Well, if I look up, yeah, that's going to be 2, because that was 64. I take that away, I've got 16, and I can bring my next 0 down, 32s into 160. Yep, that's what it is. I get 5, and it works out exactly to be 160. So I don't need to worry about having any other zeros after that. I was worried that was going to go on forever. So what did we just find? We just found out that 744 divided by 32 is equal to 23 25/100. In fact, maybe I should write down 744 0/10 and 0/100. Make sure I'm showing you what I did. How does that help us? Well, we know that 74 4/10 divided by 3 2/10 Well, we don't know what that is yet. We know this, and we can use this information to help us find this. So let's think about that. 74 and 4/10 is close to 75. I'm going to write that down. And 3 and 2/10, well, that's really close to 3. And I can think of 75 divided into 3, I know I get 25. So as I look back at my answer up here, I think of where the decimal point should go. 23 and 25 hundredths is really close to that 25. So that's where that decimal point should go. So we can use our information here to see that 74 and 4/10 divided by 3 and 2/10 is equal to 23 and 25 hundredths. So when we think about what we did, we ignored the decimal points at the start, did the long division of the whole numbers, and then considered where the decimal point went at the end. Hope that helps.